Welcome to another episode of the Hoopsfix Podcast with me, your host, Sam Nita, full-time British basketball advocate. And on this week's show, we've got none other than Matt Johnson from the Reading Rockets, obviously one of the most successful clubs in the country. And Matt also now spends a lot of his time consulting and working with other clubs to help them grow and improve what they're doing. Obviously, I've become a real stickler for the state of the game, the growth of the game. And so I love having conversations, trying to understand why British basketball is where it is and what can be done to improve it. And that was exactly what this conversation was, a long old discussion about British basketball in general, and of course what they're doing at Reading Rockets and what we can learn from it. Before we get into the show, as always, I'll give a quick mention for our Patreon account. If you enjoy what we're doing, if you want to continue supporting what we're doing, if you want us to continue what we're doing, please check out patreon.com/hoopsfix. There you can start to give us a monthly or annual contribution of as much or as little as you'd like to help us continue doing the work that we're doing. For a price of a cup of coffee, you'll make this guy very happy and help us continue bringing you this show as much as possible. So please check out patreon.com/hoopsfix. As always, I would love to hear what you think. If you are watching on YouTube, leave a comment below. If you are listening in your earbuds, please take 2 seconds to reach out on every single social media platform at Hoopsfix, or you can hit me up on email, sam@hoopsfix.com. I reply to every single one. Anyway, that is enough from me. Here is this week's show with me and Reading Rockets' Matt Johnson. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sam. Nice to see you.
Great to see you too. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff I want to get into about the wider state of British basketball. But before we do, I thought it'd be really interesting to start with the Reading Rockets. Been around a long time now. Founded in 1997, so I'll be interested in kind of hearing the founding story, how it started, and what the initial vision was, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. It's not often you get a chance to sort of speak about it either, really. I guess probably similar to you in the history of your pod and all the work that you've done. So thanks for giving me that chance. But in a very sort of, it's a family-run thing. My dad was always a businessman. I kind of had some experience playing and coaching and university at Brunel and all those things. Fell in love with it. I knew I wanted to do something, and I just knew that if we were going to do something, I wanted to do it with youth even though I was playing in Division 4 as it was at the time. I knew I wanted to do it what we call properly. I'd been fortunate to see a couple of teams in Spain, France, did some looking around, football clubs, everything. I thought there's got to be a better way to do it. And then went to see Joe Forber, saw Manchester in those days. I thought, that's probably a bit better than what we're doing. Let's have a crack at doing that. And then, family members join and it gets bigger and bigger, and you just keep doing what you think is the right thing and an opportunity for as many people as you can. And I guess that's the pilot light that never goes out, right? You just keep doing it so someone else can keep doing it with you, and you get it better and better, and it morphs into academies and unis and community programs and men, women, wheelchair, SEN sessions, and wherever the ball will kind of allow someone to smile a bit more. So that's the essence of it. It was always designed in a way that we felt Reading didn't have anything. I was at Bracknell. I was at Bracknell Tigers Junior, so I was travelling 25 minutes each way to go there. And our city was bigger, so it made more sense. And we just had a crack at it. And I think it started with a vision, and then it became a kind of commitment. And that's how it feels to summarise in 25 years. I think we've done a bit more, but it feels like that's the appropriate way to say it, because I want everyone to think about it in the same way as me, that you don't set out to do something big, you set out to do something right, and the rest of it will follow. So I guess that's the segue really for you.
And I was going to say, like what is the scope of the club now? Like, how big is it? How big is your community programs? Kind of, what are all the different categories of basketball activation that you've got going on?
Again, it's important to remember that as well. We see over 1,000 kids a week across club and community. So that's anyone that's playing. Between 1,000 and 1,100, roughly. There's about 850 in our community program, which is quite a big onion. My wife runs that with sort of 8-9 coaches, and some of that is the traditional part-time coach, full-time community coach. Some of it is some of the players doing some of that work as well, and a whole host of other volunteers as well, and paid people across that dimension. Then the club has anywhere between every year 15 and 21 teams, depending on age and stage and gender. But we're all the way through. We got to a point about 3 years ago where we called it year zero, and year zero meant we had a team for every boy and girl and wheelchair teams from the youngest age up. So we just added on our 2 wheelchair teams, which is mixed. So it meant we had something for disability sport or wheelchair athletes, something for boys and girls that they could compete from under 10s, 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s. They can go to an academy and a university if they choose to. So, yeah, it's about the numbers you look at, about 1,000 to 1,100, and about 250 are what you would consider club members, training twice a week and playing, and the others you would consider more community members. But that's how we kind of split it.
And then what's the back end sort of legal structures that sit behind it? I know most clubs will have a limited company and then a foundation, kind of like.
Yeah.
How does it work for you?
Same thing. And that's not the sort of thing at the beginning either, because everyone just builds a club and then you realise you need a business and you need that. So we were very early on. My dad's very business savvy, has run lots of businesses, and so we always knew that we wanted to keep things separately. There's always horror stories about people having it from their family bank accounts and that. That always needs to be very clear, which is we've always had different people running different sections of the club. So we have like a foundation, a charity that you would see, and that does some amazing work, and a separate group of trustees. Some I'm so thrilled used to play for the club and are now working in big time jobs and all that, and it just adds such a lovely warmth to the meetings when people know because they did it and they want it better. And then you've got your usual community business, and then you've got a limited company, which really is your senior teams and you need to protect those away, because if anything goes belly up with those, you don't want any of them to knock the other one over. I think that's just sort of smart planning, and it also allows you to have more people looking at your business and saying, what I would do is that, and you can bring really great quality people in. And we've gone for the last 3 years, had some incredible people with business acumen very, very high that have volunteered to help us structure it in a way to future-proof us. So, yeah, not the normal way, though, really, like you were saying.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, it's only recently that I've recognised there's that third element where you if you have a pro team, that I guess is the more riskier thing.
Yeah.
Knowing basketball in this country, the pro team is its own separate entity that is not sort of part of the club. Then you've got the club, which is its own entity, and then you've got the foundation, which is the charitable stuff.
Yeah.
The club, would you normally sit as a limited company, or would you sit the club as a CIC or a?
Yeah, a lot of the CICs are probably the most popular. More under charitable now, because people are paying fees and then normally wash their face, and it means you can actually get other fundraising in, and different people will have different experiences. And I would say to anyone that's doing it is just go and do your research, because sort of the trends change and the knowledge of your people around you changes. And there's some brilliant people that might not know basketball, but they certainly know infrastructures, businesses, financial planning, and the things that I would say over here, club development, financial planning, are the things that are real challenges, because you're not like a rugby, for instance, where your governing body will give you 50 grand a year to just be in existence. Our federation doesn't have that. Or if they do, we don't see it, but they just don't have it. And that's not how not at the moment. The future, I imagine, would be that clubs would receive money rather than pay money out, so they can do great jobs in their community. So it's a really interesting dynamic. And I speak to, as you can imagine, lots of club leaders, and I do quite a lot of work in supporting some of that consultancy work, but some of it is just friend-to-friend conversations. We've had quite a few of them offline. Yeah. I don't think you can do enough of it, and I don't think people that have some longevity, I think they have a responsibility to talk to the newer clubs to say, listen, we need you to be around. The next generation of kids need you to be around, so let's build that club with longevity, but build all the systems to change, because they need to change, but build the infrastructure, like, a school in a community or a church or anything that's always there you can rely on. A football club, pretty much. There's football clubs that you'll know have been around for 30, 40, 50, if not. Reading's 150 years old, It's still kicking the ball about, but it's really, really important for our community.
If you were speaking to a club that is starting from zero, guys going back or girls going back to their hometown, and they're like, we've got no basketball here and we want to start a club.
Yeah.
What would you say are the first things to get in place? Where would you start?
It's a great question, because that changes depending on loads and loads of things. But I honestly think most of the mistakes we make is we build things to be too small. And I don't mean physically. I mean, our minds, basketball's the second biggest sport in the world. It's only us that builds the fences around it, right? So that is, you've got one person prepared to coach, one person prepared to do the admin at the table. So you can only ever have 12 kids. But if you build something to say its intention is to have 500 people that just love playing, and that could be at any age, at any stage, and then we want to have boys and girls. So you've just doubled your numbers already. We want to have kids. If we're going to have 12s, 14s, 16s, we need to have 6s, 8s, and 10s, because I don't know if anyone noticed, but those kids become older, right? So that's how this works. So I would say build it, first of all, with the infrastructure and the ambition to be big and to do more. Where often I find I'm undoing people's thinking is the intention is perfect. They want a team because their son or daughter plays, but then someone else's does and someone else's does. And before you know it, they've aged out and there's no one left there. So they're not building a club, they're building a series of age groups that will move on. That's very different to saying, I want to build a club. You're going to build a house, you build foundations that will stay there. You don't move the foundations. You might add bits on above the ground, but I would say that's the first bit of advice is, well, why did you build it? I always start with all the clubs. Why did you build it and what do you want to do? And then I'm working with 2 clubs at the moment where they felt their capacity was about 50 kids a week. I thought it was 500. We just think differently. And when I showed them how you can do that by separating lots of different hubs and community areas rather than having one club, then suddenly they've built a whole infrastructure of mini pods where there's now 20 kids can go, times that by two age groups, that's 40 kids, 10 hubs, that's 400. It's not difficult to do it, but then they realised they needed more coaches, more volunteers. Those people are there. They just need you to talk to them. They just need you to sell them a vision of why they want to be involved. And it could be a business, could be money, could be coaching, could just because they love it and they want to give back. But it's important for us, I think, to challenge that. And every club should be able to sit and go, why are we doing this and what are we trying to do? I don't think there's enough of that. I know because I've run a club for a long time or been involved in the running of a club. And I love the conversations where people just say, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? I just think it's so interesting because it always changes. And we should be open to that. And we should be able to fight for it and say, actually, I'm in the way of this getting bigger. I need to move out the way because there's some real good energy here, or I need to move it towards here. So I think there's a few things in there, but I've probably answered it to say, I think we create our own fences. I don't think it's the federation. The federation has responsibility and, good, bad, or indifferent, but they can't get in the way of a good idea. Nobody can.
I know that there is many people of the thought process that we just don't have enough clubs. Like, do you agree with that? Do you think there needs to be a lot more clubs? And why do you, if you do agree with that, why do you think that we don't see more clubs?
Do I agree there should be more clubs? Yes and no. Good dodge by me, I think. But okay, let's go the other way. At the moment, we've got 14,000 playing members. If we had 140,000 playing members, we need 10 times the amount of clubs. So what we need is an interest and an availability for the game to be accessible by another 300,000, 400,000 people. I say kids, I don't mean kids anymore. I just mean people. Adults that have aged out and want to do it for fun, socially, to disability work, to SEN work, to whatever you think. Just people playing because it's good in their life, as well as the ones that happen to be good at it, which is the smallest percentile of our entire club, right? So you have to get your balance right there as well. So no, I don't think we need necessarily more clubs. I think we need more people playing, which therefore need good environments to play in that happen to be clubs. But they might be a different sort of club that you or me consider. It could be community social sessions once a week, and that's enough. But that is supported, it's known, it's there, it's sustainable, it's good, it's healthy, it's affordable. So I wouldn't call that a club, but I would say that's an opportunity to people to get together and play. But it's under the banner of the Newcastle Eagles or Solent Kestrels or Reading Rockets. I don't really care. What we need to do is make it more available for people. But ipso facto, there will be a necessity to have more clubs. So if the federation says to you or I, we need 1 million people playing, and at the moment we've got, say, 100,000, well, either every club we have has to grow by tenfold, which would mean we'd need 200 teams to fulfill that criteria. That's madness. Or we need 10 times as many clubs. So I think it's the clubs are always built after the intention and then the enthusiasm and the opportunity. Clubs are just a vehicle. It's like, it's like a school that no one goes to. There's no need. So I see it slightly differently now. I think having lots of clubs is a good health sign. That's definitely a good health sign. Then where the kids go to and how they journey through those clubs is a performance journey. That's different. I think I've answered it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Do you buy into like the sort of the Sport England figures about there's however many millions of kids playing basketball every single month, every single week? Like if you were to believe the data that is often quoted, you would think that basketball is massive, but actually when you look at the licensed players, those numbers are very small. When people say, "Oh, we should be as good as France," it's like, well, you look at their numbers, and last season they had 750,000 licensed players.
Yeah.
It's like just the levels of scales are completely different. Where do you think? Do you think basketball is as big as some people say it is in England, or do you think that it is still got a long way to go?
Yeah, of course it's got a long way to go. We would be remiss to say anything because it's not good enough for the people that are in it at the moment. The journeys aren't good enough. The opportunities aren't good enough. The coaches aren't good enough. The clubs aren't good enough. We know that. And if we were, we would be looking like France, Spain, Italy, some of those. And there's lots of areas where we have to hold our hands up and take full responsibility. I like to think that if any kids come through the club and they don't have a good experience, that's our fault. That's not anything to do with the federation. It's to do with us and what we do here. And we take that seriously if it's a junior or a senior. It doesn't mean we get it right all the time. But I think it allows you to grow. So the question on numbers, I think there's loads of kids playing, but go back to my first point, where do those kids go? Let's just say I want to play and I'm a 13-year-old girl, but I'm not very good. I've never played before. And the team in my area plays under 14 National League and they're really good. So I don't make that team of 10. There is nowhere else. So I then go to netball and there's, 20 clubs locally to me, or I go to football or I go to rugby. There's a lot more opportunity to do it at the level that I'm at that time. So where we see a future potentially good young female athlete, if there's only one team there, she doesn't fit in that for whatever reason, could be travel, doesn't want it, no friends, peer group, 100 things. It's not like we offer a menu of teams around the area. In Reading, if there's a girl here, there's one under 14 team we have. We've just started a development session. We've now got 25, 30 girls in under 14, 16s who either don't want to play National League because it's too much, so they just love playing once a week. So I think you've got to look at opportunity first before you then look at club and the commitment level that's then required, whether that's financial, travel, emotional, whatever it might be. So I buy that there is loads of people playing. We don't see it in clubs, and that's the responsibility of the clubs, because the clubs don't really have second, third teams, social teams, their own little mini leagues. There's very few of them that are built like that, and that would be my encouragement, where they could grow their network of opportunities, right? Because most people have one team per age group, and there might be 12 kids in that. Well, that's 12. Well, if we had trials 2 years ago, we had 160 boys for under 16s. The one thought that went in mine and Ben's head was, we've got two teams. There's 130 kids that are not going to be selected. Where do they go? So we went back to the community team and said, could you do an under 16 like Central Venue League thing? So once a month, it's not perfect, but they can go and play if they choose to sign up. And there's a league they can play in which has a Rockets name on it. They can meet a coach. And I think my wish is that we could have done more of that. And that's the way we should be going, do more of that. So I think there is more people playing. I think there is, but we just don't see them because our network of clubs is at best a breaking point, I would say, in terms of the amount they can do with the amount of staff they've got, court time, and all the other things that just get in the way when you're trying to do something. But I do think the energy is definitely changing. There's definitely more people. But where do they go? I might have an interest in the trombone. There's only one trombone club near me, and I don't get into that 5. Where do I go then? I might go and play the clarinet. By the way, I don't play any instruments.
Do you think in general there is an overemphasis on elite in England? Like it seems like every young aspiring coach wants to coach the national team. Like there's just everyone that's setting up a club wants to win national championships, but no one's actually thinking about providing for someone that wants to just start playing basketball.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think you have to say yes to that, but when something's small, it's easy to see yourself getting to the top, right? And it doesn't mean you've journeyed with the battle scars that you think you should have got. We've got a few young coaches here, and I say to all of them, you haven't done anything. And I say it with love, by the way, and they know that. You haven't done anything yet, and you need to go through the emotions of it being really hard to improve yourself so you learn quicker and better, and it's more resilient and more robust for you as coaches. But I also say to them, but take every opportunity that comes, because I did when I was young. I got an opportunity to coach a national team, thanks to Tim Lewis having another coach out being sick, and I was just sat there. I was just keynote. So I don't think it's the fault of the people that are in it and how they think. I don't think it is. They're a product of our environment that we create. The major problem, and you ask anyone in our club, I say the word volume a lot. If you don't have a big enough volume, you already are fighting problems. If you in the playing world, and it's the same for refereeing, the same for coaching. In the playing world, if I walk into a trial and there's 6 other people there, I know I'm going to be in the team. I don't have to try. If I walk in and there's 40 people in there and I can feel the buzz, I know I've got to go away and be brilliant next week, right? So volume is our enemy at the moment because the volume isn't big enough. Take the same thing as coaches. If there's not enough coaches fighting, someone who's maybe not got the experience that we'd expect them to have or the knowledge will get an opportunity before. If you're in Spain, you would be a very, very, very good coach. And I've seen coaches coaching 4th team under 14s, getting nowhere near regional teams, coming over here and being coach of the year or being seen as one of the best ones. That's not our fault. It's not their fault. It's an infrastructure and an environment challenge that we can actually change by increasing the volume and opportunity. If there's more referees in our system, then you have to be better to get the better games. If there's less of you, we say, thank God we got referees. So volume is our enemy, and volume should be your friend. When you're trying to do performance and development, and those things are hand-in-hand journeys, you have to have volume. Without your volume, it's like I'm the best-looking guy in a room of 1. That's the way it is. And I use that expression a lot. On the island of the blind, the one-eyed guy is king. And there's a lot of that in our sport. And I think I've benefited from it, if I'm really honest. I think I have benefited from it. And so I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm saying if we want to take it seriously, we want to know what to do, crank up the volume of the amount of kids playing. You put 100 kids playing at under 10s, you're going to get some really good ones. Just by nature, you will. So,
and the thing is that stuff goes outside of just the on the court stuff as well, and it applies to all the off the court stuff. And I say this all the time. It's like we're looking for commentators for a live stream, and it's like, well, how many people are there that are actually good, that have had any type of professional training, that have learned or anything? It's like there's a very very slim number. Because again, there aren't the opportunities. No one's going to pursue that as a career because there's no way of earning a full-time living from it. And so it leaves the situation where people are getting commentating on what are considered professional league games, and they've never had any type of formal training or other experience in their life. And so, it's definitely a volume issue and an opportunity issue as well.
Volume naturally breeds quality, whether we like it or not, because football, there's a lot of incredible footballers out that I see at our school and out in Reading that are not being coached. Why? Because they've been brought up kicking balls since they're 5, and their mates are pretty good, so they have to be pretty good just to play a game with them. They don't think they're any good, and on the grand scheme of context, they're not very good. If I took them to a country that doesn't play much football, they'd be incredible. So it's all contextual, but creating the numbers of volume is not the easiest thing in the world either, because there's not a massive amount of people that can go into schools, that can go and have the right environment for like mini basketball, right? Italy's got one of the best mini basket programs in Europe. Kids from 4 years old, 5 years old are playing proper games, low hoops, small balls, small courts, great coaches. And if I could do one thing to improve it, I would say that every single club has to do mini basket or you can't play National League. I know it sounds a little bit draconian, but I think if we can get to that point where we look at the kids that are aged between 4 and 12, traditionally 6 to 12 is that block. If we actually put our eyes on that, our 12 to 16-year-olds would be 300% better. You would then start to coach them the game rather than teach them what the game is till they're 16. So when we look at our national team performances, we look at decision making being quite significant, with significantly lower in the main against better European countries, but we don't understand why. Well, because those kids have learnt the game early. They've learnt how to play between the ages of 6 and 12. They master it between 12 and 16. They then use their technical, tactical, physical, and mental emotional starts to develop 16 to 18. And all of a sudden you're playing against adults when they're 17. Whereas a lot of our better kids have either not played when they're young and played football and transitioned or something else, or they've played in an experience which has been sport for all, not normally in a club that's nurtured them and played under 8s, under 10s, under 12s in an environment with good coaching. So that to me is where volume of coaches, volume of players equals better national team results.
Why do you think we have been missing a focus on getting kids starting to play younger? Like, it's something that all the time I've been around, everyone always says it. You look at our national teams, kids on average starting playing like 14 years old. So already a decade behind every other European country, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, why has there not been more emphasis from whether it's the federations leading on it and telling clubs that this is where we want to put in our focus because we want to improve our national teams and sort of performance on a global scale? Like, why, when people are setting up clubs, they're not thinking, do you know what, I need to just start as young as possible to get kids playing earlier? Like, why do you think that is almost overlooked?
Because clubs are told to start at under 12. It used to be under 13s. In fact, it wasn't long ago. It's under 14s was the first National League age group. So you'd start kids at under 14s because there wasn't a competition to enter into. So therefore, kids did anything but. So I think a lot of it is education from people not understanding how important it is to have kids playing from 6 till 12 in any environment you can. I think the second thing of that is opportunity, and there's some business behind it as well. Some people do it as a business, some people do it just for love. They're different models, completely different models. Some of it is primary school, so we're still a generation of teachers that have not really been involved in basketball. Whereas I bet now the next generation of primary school teachers will have seen basketball or will have played it, will have had more access to it through the internet, through NBA, whether it's BBL, whatever it might be. They would probably have rubbed shoulders with it. So it's not an alien game anymore. So there's lots of reasons. And I say to everyone, when you're looking at why things don't happen, there's normally like 10 different pots and it's a bit of each pot rather than one. And I think if you dropped someone into the middle of a city or a town and said, well, just run around from there, the Google Earth thing, where would you then run into somewhere to play a game? And it was probably going to be netball at the local outdoor courts. It's probably going to be football everywhere around you. There's probably a cricket pitch somewhere. There might even be rugby next to it. And then you're going to find an indoor place somewhere with somebody where there might be some basketball if you're fortunate. So there's still not quite that. Yeah, I think if you asked every parent and kid, what do you want to do when they're young, basketball's really high up there. Our 4 to 7-year-old sessions are packed because parents want the kids running, jumping, sharing indoors, all the other bits. So we're primed for it. But it's like everything. There's an opportunity to be amazing. But if you don't have yourself in the right frame of mind or the right opportunities, as a club, as a region, as an area, as a locality, wherever you fit, it's going to be hard for them to find you. And that's, I think we're easier to find as a sport now, but we're still not easier to find as a whole route through the sport.
Do you think the coaching of that age is less about, or the technical and tactical side is less important, and actually the more important thing is you just got an enthusiastic coach that makes a kid fall in love with basketball?
Yeah, I think I can give you one of about 7 different answers here, and they're all right and they're also all wrong. It's better to have somebody there that's enthusiastic than nobody. It's better to have somebody there that's enthusiastic and knows basketball than nobody. It's even better if that person is young, cool, a gender that you recognise, a colour that you recognise, with experience that you recognise as someone that you want to be like, that can get me into an environment where I can play games against other kids, which I love, and then go on through an environment. So it's sort of like, well, what have you got now? If you're at stage 1, go to stage 2. So I think that I can't differentiate with you because I had a meeting the other day with the guys in the youth teams with Charlie and Ben, and everyone's saying, our under 18s are going to be better if our under 12s are coached better or have or a better experience or a better opportunity. Of course. That's the same for all of us. But those things are not reality because you're working with, some parents or novice coaches or young coaches. So sometimes it's, well, what have you got? And let's get better at what we've got. And there's an education piece there. We've got YouTube. We can use lots of things. But I think if you the absolute best is, and I saw it in Malaga and Valencia, is they're 6 to 8 years old. They've got experienced, qualified, high-level coaches who are absolutely loving the game, who are paid to do it because they're professional people, and they give those kids the best experience of that game, that they love it at 6, 7, 8 years old. Then those kids get to go into an environment where basketball around them is important. So they can go to, I know I'm in South London, I can go to the Copper Box in East London, or I can go close to somewhere I can see someone who we would say is a hero, a role model, whatever word you want to use, someone I could see myself being like. So all those things have to be in place. And then I have to see 3 or 4 different clubs that can help me there. And every coach along that way, the perfect is that they understand that they pass me on, they pass me to better clubs. If there's a role, if there's a team that I should play on, they pass me, they don't worry about their own journey as a club coach. So there's a lot of things that go from that. Is it more important to have someone that's enthusiastic? I think always yes, but it's not the be all and end all. That's just better than not. Enthusiastic, yes. Knowledgeable, experienced, loving, kind, aware, all those things. And then great at coaching the game. But that's the last thing you need. I think it's a latter thing on that, if we were going to put those things together. But all the coaches out there going, oh no, you've got to have elite coaches. I understand that. I think Abramovich could come and do a pretty good job with our under-10s, right? He'd be a Samet coaches of our younger team sometimes, and they love it. He also coaches our men's team, and they love it. Why? Because he loves the game, and he's really knowledgeable about what you need at that environment, at that age, and that stage, and that's where the magic happens.
What do you think are the biggest barriers that you see that prevent clubs from getting to the size or growing beyond, single age groups, single age group teams throughout the club?
Well, you've come up with some great questions, Sam. What are the barriers? Some of that is influenced by the federation, what's allowed. If you allow, years ago, I remember East London, Crystal Palace, Brixton Top Cats, London Towers, right? 4 major big hitting teams in London. Everyone of our generation, your generation, would have played for one of them, and that was it. You went to one of those 4. So I think, I don't know, there's lots of variant factors that go into this. What do you think from your position? What's your feeling now?
I think the number one thing. Well, I think there's 2. One is venue time, facilities.
Yeah.
I think especially in London, like getting more court time is difficult, especially getting block bookings in court time. So it's not like, I get an hour here. It's like, can I get 6 hours straight on a Saturday in a leisure centre? Most places are not going to do that. And I think the other one is people. Is having enough good people that are available, that are reliable, that are skilled enough. I think that those 2 are the biggest barriers that I sort of come across when I speak to people or whatever. And I think maybe the third piece in there is just the knowledge. And I think part of partly where I see this podcast and where I see sort of the role of the foundation is really trying to democratize that knowledge, having conversations like this so that, when someone's down in the middle of nowhere and sort of doesn't know where to lean on and can't pick up the phone and call you like I can or whatever, they can learn, okay, well, this is how this club is doing it. This is what they're doing. And I can sort of follow this blueprint. I do think that there is a sort of a lack of support from the federation to clubs to teach them how to grow. I know that they've obviously Barcelona have recently hired a guy who's sort of responsible for developing clubs, and they've started releasing resources in a way that I've never seen before. But I remember even when I set up the Hoopsfix Foundation, just writing a constitution, I'm trying to find how to write a constitution, what I should be including, what I should be thinking about. There was nothing for basketball. I ended up using, if I looked at every other federation's website, from canoeing to rugby, the amount of resource and information they had to try and empower clubs was incredible. And I think there's plenty of people that want to do these things. There's plenty of people, like you're saying, that want to be involved, that want to help make a difference. They just don't know how. So I think there needs to be more sort of democratized knowledge, resource packs, so that, and knowledge sharing, conferences, CPD sessions, all that stuff to help sort of clubs level up.
I would add to that. I think that's, you're spot on, and I really enjoy listening to it because you have a completely different perspective and you sit in a different chair to me. But I think I would add to that that where local or governance, sports governance happens, the FA, I think, do a really good job of this, of what you're allowed to do in what area and what should happen when, whether you like it or not. I've dealt with the WSL and the FA a little bit in my daytime job, and there's some very clear rules about youth and about where they should go, how they should be treated. And football, I think, is the hardest job. It's the biggest sport in the world and there's the most people in it, right? So and the most challenging people in it as well. We see some challenges in some parents that we have across, our club and every club, but nothing compared to what football is dealing with. I think that that's where your administrative side has got to be red hot, and your local governance, that overseeing the people that are close to your game and close to your environment to say, no, you're not allowed that. And actually she should be there. And this is why, and this is how this works. Because clubs are innately selfish because they're trying to survive. So the people in them, and they all think they're the best. They're all trying to be the best. The good ones look out of their club and go and see someone else and talk. And I have some great conversations with Birmingham Rockets, even though they stole our name. But anyway, but I have some great conversations with those guys, and we share thoughts, fears, worries from under 10s right the way through, and it's really helpful. But I don't think we generally promote that well enough. There's no club workshop. You don't have to go anywhere and say, this is what we're going to be as a club, and someone stamps it off and authorise it. Or says, yeah, that's right. Or no, you can't do that unless you have girls. Or no, you can't do that unless you have boys. So there's, it's a bit of the Wild West. So whilst I think it's great to have more clubs, but like you see in America with AAU, NIL, the carnage that can come with, is when you look at maybe closer to France and Spain and Italy, there's more of a structure around what the club is allowed to do, and it's there forever. And they are like, this is the club of the city, this is how we run it, and this is going to be there, so it's safe for you. So I think whilst I listen to you and say venues, I was told the other week by one of our coaches it'd be so much better if we had like a 3-court facility that's our own. And I said, we've got a 9-court facility. They're just not all in the same area. Right? That's how I have to think. We have to think that way, because the kids that are playing 10 minutes up the road at Oakbank School are as important as the ones that are playing at JMA or at Loddon or whatever. And it's our job as a club to make that feel connected, which we don't always do well because we just don't. But that's what you should be doing. So I don't think venues is always the key. I think the idea, the process, the infrastructure, the mapping, the support, the ruling, all that is the most important thing. Because if I got some great people together in London and said, we're in this area of London, this is what we're going to do. We're going to start at 6, and in 10 years' time, we're going to have an under-16 team. How many would say, oh, yeah, I'm in? Not many. But there would be, if they are, they go, well, these are our kids. That we develop those. We don't need yours from over there. We don't need them. Not only are we going to do that, we're going to add 500 more kids into the pot of playing basketball in our country. I was on I don't know if it's a podcast, or it was definitely a conversation, and it might have been during COVID when there was 50 of the really good coaches. You might have been on it. Jackson was on it, Alan. And I said to all of them, if you want to really improve the national teams, all of you go out and coach 50 under 8s per year for the next 10 years. You'd put in about 10,000 kids that will be really well coached by all you guys, or you will stay at an age group or at a team for the next 10 years and coach 12. I know they would never do that, but my point was to make everyone think differently, that the 16-year-old is a 6-year-old now that hasn't started yet. And the better they get that beginning, in the better club and the environment that we talked about, then you're cooking on gas. So I think there's quite a lot in that. And I referenced what you were saying, but I think good coaching and great ideas always overcome structural problems. I think they just do.
But don't you think, from the going back to the venues, right?
Yeah.
Let's say a court in London is £75 an hour.
Yeah.
Right. You got your coach in there is getting paid £25 an hour, and then you got 10 kids paying £5 for the session.
Yeah.
It's like you're just covering costs.
Yeah.
And until clubs can make money, which they can't until they have venues that they don't have to pay extortionate rent on.
Yeah.
You can't move away from being, or it's very difficult to move away from being volunteer-led, having full-time coaching roles, because you're never growing in any type of way. I feel like so many clubs are just treading water, just money in, money out, paying their bills, but not actually able to grow because of the barrier around not owning their own facilities.
Yeah.
Like how much does Reading spend on court costs a year? It must be insane.
Oh yeah, like 60, 70,000, maybe more. It's the money's ridiculous. I'm not really thinking about our men's costs either, but 20 odd teams and they're training twice and 3 times and whatever. But I think again, it's always been something that you have to think about. Of course you do, because you're responsible. But this is a misnomer, by the way, of people thinking that this isn't the same problem in other countries. It's the same problem in a lot of other countries. But what they have is either long-term sponsors who are saying, yeah, we want to put that into junior basketball because we just love it and it's 10 grand a year and that's our CSR, ESG money, whatever it is. And yes, we're going to do it for 5 years for you. We're going to look after you, whatever. I don't think at the moment, the commercial side, I'm doing a bit more commercial work at the moment, and it's very interesting because I think commercial people want to see that your idea is strong, it's robust, it holds up, it's got sustainability, it's got longevity, and it can trust you. Clubs that have been around a long time, I would go and put money into Manchester United or Reading Football Club because I know it's going to be there. But I do it into Richmond Jaguars, who are in Division 1 for 2 years and gone, or pick another basketball team that you want to talk about that's now not around. There's a risk that's associated with that, and businesses are risk averse. I think there's a lot more people out there that would help support the funding of clubs and growth. I think the federation's got great links. I think there's charitable links. I think there's local links to do with getting kids off the street. I think it really depends on what your picture is and what your vision is to how important it is to make that work. Some of those are, we need the coaches to be paid, or we don't. Some are parents that don't need to be paid, so you can write that cost off. Some is we go and work in a school and we can put some costs back because I do an hour because I live locally and we get the court for free. Some do that. Again, they're not sustainable, but there's a million ideas that I think we can try to get to if the idea of building something big is important, because building something big helps everyone in that community and locality. That's all I've ever spoke about at our school, at local schools. Like, just get part of something that's big. But if you don't have the knowledge or scope to build it big, you can't expect people to put money into it. And I think what you're talking about, there is 2 separate things between building a club there and building a business where, and there's an overlap of it, but there's 2 business models and you need to be careful about how those are done because every club is built slightly differently. Some, like Manchester, have great support from the council, or they did traditionally. Great. They're not wrong. That's fantastic. Some will have less of that. In London, you have more. There's more businesses in London with more money. More people are, from different countries. They've seen basketball. There's advantages and disadvantages everywhere. I just think you've got to know what lyrics we're choosing to sing.
If you were made the CEO of the Federation tomorrow, what would be your number one priority?
Well, let's start with small questions. I think I probably wouldn't be there a long time because I probably do a lot of stuff that people would think isn't very helpful. I would, that's the truth, because I think there's a lot of things when the Federation is administering a sport that isn't well run domestically by itself anyway. So as a group of clubs, we have to put our hands up and say we're not the best yet. We've got lots of faults. There's lots of warts and all. It's a great game, but I'm happy to say the fault is within the clubs. But the Federation, I think, allows too many things to happen. It allows coaches to keep coaching when they're not very good. So there's no system where I have to prove that I know what's right for under 10s and under 12s, because that's really important to me. So I'd ramp up the coach education side of it, and I'd give the people in charge with the powers to stop people coaching, or the other way around, for the coaches to evidence how well they're doing. That's the language you have to use nowadays so you don't offend anybody. I would say that. I would also, as probably I've talked about before, I would talk more about volume than I think the Federation has ever spoken about. I would force clubs to be bigger in a healthy way, to have, you can't be in National League. I mean, I tried to do the maths on this. But every club that's in the National League at 12s, 14s, 16s has to have the same equivalent number of players at the same age groups 3 years younger. So you're 8s, 10s, 12s, right? Even by doing that, you've immediately reduced the need for kids to go from club to club, because every club has its own feeder system. So they're the 2 things that I think, if you had to put me on the spot, you said 1, but I'm going to give you 2. They're the things I do straight away, because I think everything else comes from that. It builds volume. And then I would put in, I think rugby have done a pretty good job of this, I would put in a system where parents are expected to support by knowing what roles there are around the teams, rather than just being there to clap, shout, and whatever, film the games and put it on YouTube. Like I'm over that stuff. Like that will happen anyway. That's your world, and it's helping our game no matter. But it's not as important as getting the right infrastructure for kids. The getting that bit right means we need more kids. So the ones that have got the right attitudes and the ones and the parents. I'm more than happy to say to some of our parents, if they're not happy in the club because you don't like the coach or you think this, they'll go somewhere else. I'm 50. I don't really mind anymore. And it's a message that me and the junior club are sending out. Like, if you think your coaches are not doing it because they're not very good, either go and help them or don't be there. Don't pull it back. And I know that's a bit counterintuitive for some people, but I'm over that stuff. But that's the thing that I think would make the biggest difference. You force the clubs to grow, then all the other standards happen from that, right? You develop better kids, more boys, more girls. If you're going to have a girls program, you need a boys. If you've got a boys program, you should have an equivalent opportunity for girls. That to me is standard. So those three things there align with coaches and adults being better. It's not the qualification, it's the education. The qualification is the paper, the education is the journey. I've got lots of level 2 coaches that have not qualified for 30 years and they still are coaching. That's not educated. That's passing a piece of paper, right? So education is something that goes on with you forever. So I would improve the checkpoints that coaches and adults have to go through so they feel as though they're receiving education. So they feel better tooled for the journey that they're on as a person involved in a young person's life. I think that those three things, just those three things alone, with some real robustness around them, could very, very quickly change the sort of the direction of our game.
And you've kind of alluded to it in earlier conversation, but do you think there needs to be sort of a clear demarcation of the pathway and saying, do you know what, these are the elite clubs. If you are a talented player, this is where you need to be going. If you're you're a community club and this is where you focus, but the moment a child gets talented, you send them here. Obviously when GB was around back in GB is still around, but when GB had funding, there was this regional institute of basketball model they were looking at doing. Kind of like, where do you see that?
Yeah, it's a good one, isn't it? Because you can look, the mistake to make and the right thing to do at the same time is to look elsewhere. And when you look at different models, and people will give you the INSEP model in France, they'll give you the Pro Club model in Spain, they'll give you the AAU model and the high school model in the States. And actually what you have to do is give all that a bit of a shake. But what do we have at the moment? I think there's a lot of people that have great theory, but getting from the theory to the practical is a big, big journey, right? It took Spain, it took France. I was lectured by Lucien Legrand, who was one of the guys that built the INSEP system. It took them 21 years before the clubs agreed it was good. 21 years and millions of pounds of funding, right? And no one sees that. They just see Wembanyama, or they see Boris Diaw if you're older, right? Or whatever it might be, or Tony Parker. But the first guys left the clubs to go there, or were asked to leave smaller clubs to go to bigger clubs. They hated it. France hated it, which is natural. I understand it. So I don't think you can do that the way we're doing it. But certainly with the football model, I quite like, where you've got the categorization of academies. Your category 1, your category 2, category 3, whatever, and you go through some sort of audit process. I like that. DICE and EABL clubs do that a little bit. So, not to the extent that it could be done, but with the staffing structures and limitations, and it's not easy to do those things. But I was on a board, it was 7 years ago, I think it was, and we all sat together, the basketball development model. And one of the things we spoke about, I was doing it with Jesse Cezanne and Gail Richards at the time, was a model that you'd enjoy as a club. You would self-assess to say, we are a community club that's for participation. And we can be a 3, a 2, or a 1. 1 would be we've got them at every age group, got every kid at every age group, but we don't want to be in the National League. It's actually where the old Shenley Scorpions were, I think, with Milton Keynes. They started off not National League, community club. I think he has something like 400 players before they went to the model that we see now as MK Breakers, which is a great one. So I would follow something like that, where you'd have, and you could be proud of saying we're a community club, we're level 2, or we are a performance club, which means we now are into the more performance-based leagues, your Premier Leagues for 14s, 16s, 18s. We have an academy structure. We take it seriously where we have more strength and conditioning maybe, or we invest into physios or individual coaching or filming, whatever it might be. You can create quite quickly a set of, if you'd like to be here, this is what it looks like, just a set of standards. And I think clubs would love it because they could be the best in their group of 6 different areas. And you could be both. You could be a community club that's almost got a participation feel with a performance arm to you. But you could choose where you were going. And I pushed that hard with the federation, and it just didn't get through. And why, I don't know. Maybe it's not a good idea. Most often the ideas that don't get through aren't the best ones, right? But I still think without that, my main worry is, as parents, do you understand where you're putting your child? Or do you understand that that club is the right one for your child? Because a lot of the time, those decisions, when they're made too late, by nature are too late. Whereas most football parents I speak to here around Reading, town of nearly 300,000, every single parent I know says if their kid's good at football, they want to play for Reading. They know very quickly, and they know the structure and the leagues. Nearly everyone I speak to does. You ask someone in basketball, and that is a very murky conversation. And it's not their fault. It's our...
Do you think the basketball structure in England is just too complicated? The amount of times I have to try and explain to someone, because we have this sort of weird hybrid model between education and club system, right? That, when you have someone that comes over from France or America and you try and explain, oh, well, there's the under-18 National League, but there's also the EABL, and then there's the CBL, and then there's AOC, and then there's like Division 1, and then there's the SLB. Like it feels hard for someone that doesn't know it, that hasn't been in it, to get their head around.
I think it hasn't been managed well. Like the ideas behind it work, like because they've been in other countries, right? But the getting from that to having the right number of staff to be in those places to make sure you're doing what it says on the tin is what you're doing. So therefore, when you don't do that, if you go to a Category 1 football academy, you will see the same stuff everywhere. If you go to an EABL academy now, you'll see very similar things, most similar things in most of the academies. If you go to, but I could go to a college up the road and have something the same. So it's very difficult for people to understand what the differences are. And unfortunately, that builds distrust. Distrust works for people that want a kid to go and play for them because they think it's going to be good for them and long term, blah, blah, blah. Whereas if you look at every other European country, the best kid at every age group is in the most local best club, playing at the best age group, in the best league with the best coaches and the best competition. That is not the same for us. We have a lot of kids that are very talented playing in conference or playing in a lower league because their club isn't in that. So therefore, you've got lots of like curled edges towards performance. Whereas performance is fairly linear, that we keep going forward and we keep going up, whereas we kind of bottom out with a lot of those problems. And that just causes where we said at the very beginning, best kids, best clubs, best coaches for the longest amount of time equals best opportunity, best potential, better national team results. That line, if you took most of our kids, that line for them does this. So, and all the time, it's just wasted time. It's not anyone's fault. It's just the way it is. It's not managed. The structure isn't managed where the best kids go to those places. And even in that, what is the best place isn't clear for others. Whereas, as I said to you, I could tell you now that a Category 1 football academy has to spend £1 million a year on their juniors, and they have to audit what they're spending on and why, and the FA gives it to them because of that. And they will make that back on player sales, so the business model for them works. So there is a business model. We don't have a business model with youth because they don't earn any money. So you're looking for volunteers, and there's lots of interesting curveballs that we kind of throw at ourselves. And some of that is just we can't do anything about it. And some of it is actually, well, if 10 clubs suddenly professionalise their youth programmes with investment, everyone would know, and they did it from under 12s, and you went there and you trained 3 times a week with a highly qualified coach, you will be better than 90% of the kids in the nation. Just by they prove it in Spain, France, Italy, Germany, what those countries are doing with less physically talented athletes, let alone the ones like France that are now going down that road with talent, and Serbia that are doing a completely different model altogether. So there's a lot in there. There's a lot of things. And I think with that amount of noise, we have to kind of strip it back and just focus on what each club can do better, you know?
And quickly, I'm aware of time. I wanted to just get onto coaching a little bit. You've obviously had a lot of input into various coaching strategies or coaching advisory boards over the years. Like when you look at, I guess the broader state of coaching in the UK, where do you think the biggest weaknesses are, and what do you think needs to be done to improve the quality of coaching that we have?
Yeah, I mean that's a big one, isn't it? From from what I've seen, and I've gone through it and been a product of it, and I'm very proud of that. But I think there's a lot of things we need to do better, and volume is number one, because creating more people that want to be coaches and have more opportunities to be coaches forces everyone else to be better than them, right? So we've established that. I think having better tracking systems. So what that means is if I qualify as a level one, that I'm tracked through the system, I'm doing well, I'm becoming more competent. And as I'm becoming more competent, I've been coaching a few years now, I'm ready to do my level two because I can prove that. I can prove the evidence that I've done it. Now I go on to taking teams by myself. I'm tracked through to, now I'm young and ambitious. I want to be on the Aspire program. And what does that look like? And all the levels are there that are supported and they're networked into my framework so I can access all that information at the right time. So I think we need to sort of modernize coach education not being 4 days and an exam, and it needs to be a kind of, I'm acquiring these skills and this knowledge and I can evidence I'm doing it, as when I evidence enough of those things, I pass a threshold that means I go to the next thing. And that's very different how you model that, because if you're a coach and you can just get your qualification and you're done, you're just innately lazy. Humans are innately lazy anyway. So if you do it the other way, where you have to continue to do CPD, I have to do certain things every year to give me my 1,000 points a year of CPD, which is what one of our football coaches here was talking to me about. If he doesn't have that, he can't coach the following year in these leagues. He can do this. And then I would add on to that age and stage specific bolt-ons. So coaching girls is different to boys. Coaching 10-year-olds is different to 18-year-olds. Coaching senior national league is very different, and coaching EABL is very different to coaching under 18 conference, right? So there needs to be the sort of core network of availability plus the sort of florets around the outside that I can then select modularly to go with me where I want to go. That's what a modern coach education system would look like. And it would check and challenge me along the way. And my competency wouldn't be whether I'm actually coaching and winning games. It wouldn't be that. No one would care. Winning is part of a program of whether the talent you have is a bit further ahead than the person on the other end to you. That doesn't mean anything. So I think coach education is probably the most important thing that we could really get our heads around, and that making sure people have to reclassify every 2 or 3 years along with a CPD model that it doesn't help me to go and listen to an MBA coach when I'm coaching under 14 girls in their first experience. It doesn't help me, but there's nothing else I can go and do. So there should be a selection of things around available to me, and it could be online, right? I mean, we're doing it now. Learning can be done anywhere, but I should have to do it. I should have to go once a month. If I'm coaching under 12 girls, once a month I should have to spend an hour from someone from the federation or someone with knowledge that says, now here's the next topic we're covering. I should have to have that. I don't have to learn it. I can sit there and have a coffee and not listen. But I'm still there. Or I can be the young one that's coming on, or the person that takes it really seriously. I'm going to do it. It's going to be great for me. So I think that within those things, I think there's enough in there for where we are to give us in the next 3 years, we could have a very different coach education program.
And then final question, we're going to go full circle, come back to the Reading Rockets.
Go on.
Professional ambitions. Obviously, there's been a lot of change within the BBL, now SLB, over the last couple of years since 777 got involved. Franchise fees have gone up. The sort of the quality of owner, the wealthiness of an owner they're looking for is very different to what it was before. It almost feels like it shut out a lot of NBL Division 1 teams with aspirations because the franchise fee is well over 7 figures now.
Yeah.
Sort of where is Reading Rockets sitting within that mix? Like, how are you feeling about, I know that there's been sort of public statements about wanting to be in the professional league, wanting to work your way up. Obviously, I know venue's been a barrier over the years. Kind of where does that currently sit now?
Yeah, I got to eat my own words, haven't I? Because venues are a problem now, and I just hope venues aren't a problem. Hey, it's not the seats are the problem. That's what they want. And I think it's one thing saying, "Oh, we need a bigger venue." We get, probably 400 people to most games, a good environment, right? We need that to be 800 before we need 800 seats. You need the people before you need the seats. We can have a 1,500 seater with 1,000 going spare at the minute. That's not good business. So I think I don't think there's a specific nailed on ambition for us to be in A-League at a certain time, because if you do that, then you aim for something and you can negate the other things that you're doing really well and that need to be done, as we spoke about in the last sort of 50 minutes. Our unabashed ambition for the club is to grow it, and it'll have to take a different format because it's pretty big at the moment, but I think it could go probably 2 or 3 times the size it is now, but we need to restructure in different things. There'll be people listening to this now and the club going, "Oh God, what's he doing?" But I think we have to have that ambition to grow, and alongside that means your women's team to grow and have better infrastructure. You want your wheelchair teams to grow and be better. You want your men's team to grow and be better, because that normally is the thing that pulls you along the line, and then your youth teams sort of as well. So the SLB thing for me is not. It's not the be all and end all of the world. That's 12 people playing. We've got 1,000, so it's a tiny percentage. Is it important? Yes. Does it get you somewhere where you can't be now? I don't really know, because to compete at the moment, most teams you have to have 6 or 7 imported players in. So it's a big budget that you've got to get to. If we had an SLB team, I always maintained that we'd keep a Division 1 team, because then you would just change the culture of that. Slightly younger, maybe guys that are earlier on in their careers and stuff. But now the way Division 1 is going, there is really good teams right the way through, with Worthing and Nottingham at the bottom, who have just recruited new guys in, and there's no teams in there anymore that, are struggling for any reason. So it's very interesting that the quality of the Division 1 at the moment is getting higher. There's good coaches in nearly every team. The driving of the standards of that league, I think, is to be closer to a professional division, a second professional division. Every team is paying players now, whether it's 1, 2 or 9. And there's some great stuff. I mean, you go to Hemel and it's as good an environment there at our place as it is at some of the BBL places. That's good. That's what we should be trying to do. The rest of it, if we get an opportunity to be in the SLB, I would never do anything that would affect our financial longevity and sustainability. And we've got a lot of smaller sponsors and people that are working with us that I wouldn't shell them. It's really important that you keep growing from your own garden. I don't want to move to someone else's garden. It just doesn't mean to be something that I want to do. So I don't know if I've answered it or I've dodged it, but we certainly don't have anyone that's got, the sort of money that is saying we're going to buy your franchise. There's other venues being built and other things going on around here, and those still don't mean you're an SLB venue. And some cities aren't ready for it. I think we've got the infrastructure to do it, with the knowledge and the coaching and the support staff, but that doesn't mean it's the right thing for us to do straight away. But yes, of course, it's an ambition, but it's not one that I carry as the only thing I wake up every morning to do, I think is probably what I'm saying.
Yeah, perfect place to leave it. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. We'll have to get you back on for a part 2 at some point.
Thanks, Sam.
And wish you all the best with the rest of this season.
Thanks, Sam.